let's get going. Can you see my screen? I've got the Qualtrics project list up.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Um, all right, welcome to class 2, everybody. Um, for those of you who might be new, I am Paul Byrne. I am the Research Data Services Librarian here at Syracuse Library, and I do all things data. And I am the main support person for Qualtrics, end user support. The back end stuff is taken care of by somebody else. Are there any questions about what we went over last week before we get started? Okay, awesome. Today's class, we will, excuse me, begin talking about creating questions, because of course that's why you do survey, to ask people questions. Uh, and there's many options and things that you can do for that. So we're going to come over here to create project. And depending what screen you're on, this button might be in a different place. And as I mentioned last week, Qualtrics has many templates that you can use: employee satisfaction, interview feedback, COVID-19 kinds of things, uh, academic projects, student recruitment, satisfaction. You can start with any of those and edit as you go along. Most of you most likely will be starting from scratch or creating a brand new survey. So you click survey, and then you come down here to get started. And you can call it anything you like. And we're going to call this and you can put it in a folder if you want. You don't have to. Having folders, if you have a lot of surveys, putting them in folders really helps keep them organized. I strongly advise it if you have several. And then they ask, how do you want to start your survey? You can start with a blank survey project. You can import a QSF file, which is a Qualtrics import-export file. So if friend of yours has a survey that you want to replicate, they can export their Qualtrics file, email it to you or whatever, and then you can import it, and boom, you already have that survey already created. You can copy a survey from something that you already have going on in your own project list, or you can use a survey from your library. We'll talk about the library in a minute or two. But right now, we're going to create a blank survey project. So as I say, that's mostly what you'll probably be doing. And it'll take a moment and spin, and it will bring you to this page. And they always have one default question to start off with. And it's always this, 3-point multiple choice question. If you want to change that at any time, you can come over here to question type. And what's nice is if you hover, it kind of gives you a little bit of a preview of what it looks like. And there's all kinds of types of questions, even questions that to collect background information. So a timing question, your respondent wouldn't see, but it times how long it takes them to answer a question or a particular block of questions. Graphic sliders, drill down, signature, heat map, all kinds of things. I need to mention again that not all of these questions are accessible. So as I mentioned last week, you want to make sure that any themes or look and feel kinds of things you set up before you start creating questions to make sure that anything you put in will be accessible if that is important to your project. So you click and you can change the different kinds of questions. And as you probably notice, as you change the type of question, uh, the options you have over here on the left for customizing that particular question changes. And that's pretty nice. It makes your life easy. Um, one thing is text to graphic. This isn't actually a question. It doesn't collect information. It's just a way of displaying information to your respondents. So this is what you would use to write your introduction, write your informed consent statement. Um, and what happens is in, excuse me, in the data, it would just show, there would be a column for this and it would just say whether or not your respondent saw that. And of course, if it's the first one and it's a consent statement, then everybody needs to see it. Um, and you can see you can change the text that's in there. If you go to rich content editor, you've seen all of these before. There's um, all this kind of formatting, bulleted lists, etc., tables, links. Um, you can look at the source code, insert a graphic. This little icon here, insert piped text. This can be very useful in pulling information from other parts of the survey or perhaps from your directory, your contact list, if you have extra information in there. We'll be talking about that in a couple of weeks. We'll go through the details of piped text next week because there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with that. And so and there's options you can do. You can move the question, copy it, replace it from your library. We'll look at the library in a moment. You can add a page break after the question. You can preview the question, which now what happens here is this doesn't actually, it's just a way of looking at the question. Once you close, it's not testing it. It's not, adding any data or anything like that. It's just a way of looking at the question as the person would see it in the actual survey. You can add a note. Now the note is only you will see it or anybody else who has access, edit access or view access to this back end of your survey. Your respondents will not see it. So it's a good way of making reminders for yourself, kind of, or making comments back and forth with any collaborators you might have. And of course, you can delete it. And you can either click on Add New Question there, or if you click on these little pluses here, by default, it goes below. If you want, oh, I forgot, I should have put something above it. So let's one thing I wanted to mention here is you see this remove formatting. What this does is if you copy and paste, say from a web page or a Word document, there's often code behind that that you don't normally see, but it can mess things up when you copy and paste it into Qualtrics. So what you want to do is get rid of all that behind the scenes formatting, and that's what remove formatting does. Because there are times you will be copying and pasting from things. And of course, there's the HTML view if you want to do HTML. Now, as you may have noticed, Qualtrics automatically numbers the questions Q1, Q2, Q3 in the order that you create them, in the order that you do add new question. And as you can see, I made this one above Q1, but it's Q2. There's a couple of ways of changing that. Now let's talk about these. By default, Qualtrics does not show the question numbers to the respondents during the survey. You can turn it on so that it does. And accessibility says that you should show question numbers. The thing is, if you're doing any kind of skip and display logic or any kind of randomization, Qualtrics does not renumber things on the fly. So if you do any of that, your numbers are going to get out of order, which now confuses everything. So it's a judgment call on your part as to whether to show the question numbers or not. If you are not showing them, you can change these. And you can call this we'll just call this age for now. And then we can say, call this informed consent. Now, what this does is when you go to download your data either to Excel or SPSS, in Excel, this will be your column header. In SPSS, this will be your variable name. And that makes life a lot easier to have descriptive variable names or column headers than it is to have Q1, Q2, Q3, et cetera, especially if at some point they get out of order.
Paul, can I ask a question?
Sure, of course.
When it is exported, is it listed in the column in the order of the questions here? So like would age be first and then informed consent is second? And
Yes.
then every question after that. So if it's if Q2 was left up there and then Q1, would Q2 still be first in an Excel spreadsheet?
Correct. Yes, it would be.
Okay.
The order that you see the questions, whatever you have here, the order of the questions in the survey will be the order of the questions in the data, regardless of whether this is Q1, Q2, or age or anything else.
Okay, thank you.
I think about it, I should have left this as Q2 and Q1. So you go through and you're creating all your questions. Let's say it's not a big deal to you. You don't have that many questions. So whatever these are isn't a big deal. But you do want them in order so that it's not kind of jumbled up in your variable list or your columns. You can come over here to Tools and Auto Number Questions. And you can even change how they're numbered. By default, it's sequential 1, 2, 3, 4, as I said. Block is within each block. They're renumbered. So the second block would be Q2, question 1, Q2, question 3, and so on. And then there's internal ID. Everything in Qualtrics has an ID. Why you might use this, I haven't figured out yet. But I guess it's useful to some people who do some real high-end, behind the scenes programming. You can do all kinds of APIs and stuff with your survey. But most of the time, you're just going to do sequential or you're going to change. You can add a custom prefix. So if you don't want Q, you can do V or VAR. And this skip export tags that I have defined, if you've changed either of these, like I changed Q1 to informed consent, but then you left all the other ones, it would not change informed consent to Q1. It would leave it as informed consent, even though everything else is Q1 or VAR1, however you want to do it. Another reason for perhaps changing these is sometimes you might use a pre-made survey that you can purchase from someplace. That's done a lot in psychology. And they often come with, like SPSS programs to analyze and process the data. And it'll be a lot easier if you already have your data coming out with the proper variable names that they talk about. Often there's even instructions saying how to collapse different variables, different questions to make indexes. And it's a lot easier if your data comes down with the same variable names that they use. Otherwise, if you leave it as Q2 and they have more descriptive names, then you'll need to go into your data and change all the variable names, say in SPSS or the column headers in Excel, to match the instructions. Or, and I absolutely do not recommend doing this, editing the SPSS program to match what you have. Really don't do that. Change the variable names. But as I say, it's best and easiest just to have a descriptive variable name instead. Any questions? About that? We'll see how that makes more of a difference way at the end when we start actually generating our data. As I mentioned, as you change the question type, your options over here change appropriately for whatever type of question you're doing here. Go back to multiple choice, and you can see allow one answer. You get the radio buttons. Automatically changes it to a checkbox. Add the number of choices. I'm going to look at edit multiple in a moment. Use suggested choices. And there's a whole bunch. And it automatically changes them, makes your life real easy. You don't have to go in and type every single one. You can even reverse the order back and forth. You can change this. If you so choose. And there are often options to do with that. Allow text entry, get the rich content editor again to do some fancier things. You can put a graphic in. Exclude from analysis. I don't usually recommend doing this. It's really more in terms of Qualtrics internal reporting. So if you create a chart with this, it will leave that particular answer out. You can do pipe text. As I said, we're going to talk about that more. Display logic is next week. It's whether or not you display a particular item. Assign to group. This is kind of useful sometimes if you have a really long list. Say you have a list of all 50 states and you want to group them, and it's only visual. Group them by region, Northeast, Southeast, West, etc. You can create those groups and then put each state in the proper region. And as I say, it's nothing more than a visual for your respondents. You move that item up or down, or you can take it out altogether. Go here and you can allow text entry. And it gives you that box so you can change this to say other, please explain. You've seen those kinds of questions. And you can even have options on the box itself. Now you get options for the text entry, for the size of the box, validation, whether you want to force them to write something in there, validate the email, that it's a properly formed email address, phone number, etc. Qualtrics is really cool. That gives you all those options automatically based on what you're doing. This edit multiple, this can be really useful. As I mentioned, if you have a big long list, say that perhaps you're copying and pasting from someplace else, like a list of all the states, or maybe all the senators from all the states, you can copy and paste the list into here. And then apply, and it will automatically put all those in all at once. Makes your life a lot easier. Any questions so far? If I'm going too fast or I'm not clear on something, please say so. Okay. You can change whether you want the list, select boxes. And again, that what options you get here depend on the type of question. If we click here, you can see there's text graphic or a file, add validation. And we'll do more with validation next week as well when we get into, real customizing things. Actually, we'll be doing it in a little while. Now, what I want to show you is down here is recode values. Actually, I'm going to change this back to list. Makes it a little bit easier. By default, what Qualtrics does is in your data, each one of these answers is going to be coded as 1, 2, 3, 4 automatically. Sometimes you don't necessarily want that. You might want to say reverse code these. Or let's say what year were you born in? Come on. As you can see, the default coding may not be what you want in your data. So you can change this now to 1990. So now when you download your data in the column for this variable, instead of it being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, will now be 1990, 1995, 2000, etc., depending on, of course, how the respondent answers the question. When you look at your data, that will make a little more sense, especially depending on what type of analyses you're doing. You might want it this way because, of course, there's a different gap, I guess, between 1990 and 95 than there is between 1 and 2. This variable naming really is a misnomer. It's not naming the variables as SPSS or SAS or Stata or even R or anything else. It's more what SPSS would call a value label. So that when you create a table or a chart, this is what gets displayed instead of necessarily the number. So you can call it and so if you do, say, a bar chart, this column would be displayed as the written out 1990 instead of the number. As I say, SPSS would call this value labels, but Qualtrics calls it variable naming, but it's not the variable, it's the value. There are a few quirky things here and there in Qualtrics, but it's nice because you can do it this way right from the beginning, and when you download your data, that's what it looks like. And of course, you can require a response, force somebody to answer the question so that they go through. When they click next or submit at the bottom of the page, if they didn't answer this question, Qualtrics will come back and say, you have to answer this question. They won't let the respondent go forward until it is answered. Or you can request a response. They'll come back and they'll say, pretty please answer this question. But if they again click on next, it will go through. And there's validation you can do. And that also depends on what type of question or values you have here. You can say minimum number of choices, answer range. Change that to allow one answer. Now it automatically goes to custom. And what's nice is when you see this kind of logic, this kind of a dialog box or window, it works the same throughout Qualtrics. So this same validation will work with randomization. It will work with any other thing. So you don't have to learn a different way of doing it every time. And it lists the questions. And we're going to choose that. And we'll say 1990 is selected, not selected, is displayed. And again, depending on what type of question this is, these options will change. And you can have a custom error message or use one of their default. I'm just going to say require entry. And you can do multiple kinds of valid. You can do some pretty fancy logic here. You can do and or. Don't get too fancy with this because you'll drive yourself crazy. Try to keep it simple. One thing to remember is that the validation will pass if this condition is met. So if the respondent clicks on 1990, the condition is met and they can go on. If they click anything else, they're going to get an error. And that's kind of usually the opposite of what we might think. Is, this will throw an error message if they clicked on the thing you want them to click on. So we're just going to say save for now. And neat thing is we can come up to this preview, which is different from the preview question here. So this will actually work with the validation. So I'm going to click on 1995 because that should throw an error. Say, please enter text. That's just the error message I happen to select. So now we can come back here, which is the one that should work. And it does. Couple of things about this preview window. So you can restart the survey. Just redo it. Place bookmark. If you have a long survey, you don't want to necessarily have to always start from the beginning. When you press that preview button, it will start at the beginning of the survey, not where you happen to be editing in the survey. So you can make a bookmark, and then when you click preview, it will go to that portion that you last bookmarked. Makes your life a lot easier. You don't have to keep clicking through. tools. You can ignore the validation. If you have a lot of validation and you're going through this, it gets tedious to have to answer every question correctly instead of just kind of clicking through. So if you ignore validation, you can click through and look at things more quickly. View published version. That is like the last major version. We'll see in a second. We'll go back to it. And you can scan a QR code so that you can look at it on your phone. And you can also see a preview of it. You can also share this preview with other people. So if you want to get comments from somebody, link visibility is brand internal, public is anybody can see it. You probably want to keep it on brand internal unless your collaborator is outside Syracuse University, then you have to do the public. And you can just copy the link and email it to them. And they can see this preview. They can only see it. And they can, answer it. But they can't make any edits to it unless you've put them on as a collaborator. So as you're going through and you're creating and you preview and you test your things, Qualtrics does automatically save your work as you go along. And we'll see more as we get into things, especially when you're using survey flow or you're doing, a lot of skip logic, or we're doing carry forward randomization, as we'll see in the coming weeks. It saves the work that you did, but it doesn't necessarily put everything together is the best way that I can say it. So sometimes you have to click publish. And again, to me, that's a little bit of a misnomer because you're not publishing it. You're not sending out to anybody. Really what publish does is it creates what we call a major version. So it takes everything, resets it all, puts it all together, and now everything should work correctly. So, when you click that, you get this little thing. We took a quick look at it last week. You can look at the recommendations. We saw this. And this is nice to do really before you send out your survey, just to make sure there's nothing weird going on. And it does an accessibility check. And if there were problems with this, it would, like it says, enable bot detection. If you click there, then it turns it on for you. If there's, a display logic thing, it'll show the question and you can click on it and will bring you to the question that has the problem. The same, especially with the accessibility. Makes your life a lot easier in, polishing up your survey. But, you click publish, it does this, you click publish here. Now you can send this out. You can copy this anonymous link and email it to people, but you probably don't want to do that from here. So you just say, okay. And now you can see publish is grayed out. So as you're going through and creating your survey, and you're doing, the survey flow or whatever, and you do the preview and it doesn't really work, you did something and you don't see that happening, you can come back here to the publish button, and if it's not grayed out, click on it, and that should propagate or finalize any changes that you've made in the in the last few minutes. Are there any questions? Okay, I've either confused everybody or you all went to sleep or put you all to sleep. All right, so if there are no other questions, oh, that's nice. I just noticed they changed the look and feel icon. It used to be a roller, a paint roller instead of a paintbrush. That's the other thing about Qualtrics. I'm glad I noticed that. Qualtrics very rarely comes out with, like a big new version of Qualtrics. It's not like Word or some other programs, SPSS, where, every year, every couple of years, they come out with a whole new version and there's all this new stuff and things don't work the same as they used to. Qualtrics has only done that a couple of times in the 8-9 years that I've been using it. What they do is, as they make new things available or things work a little bit differently, they add that in. And it's happened, it's rare, but it has happened where I'm working on a survey in the morning. I go to lunch and I come back and something is working differently than it used to. Some people really hate that, and I can see why. Some people like it because as new things come out, they're available. You don't have to wait several months for something you really, really want to have. So just, kind of as a heads up, if something changes as you go to lunch, that's the way Qualtrics works.
Paul, can I ask another question?
Sure, of course.
Where you had the folders when you were creating a new project, and you
Mhm.
might have already showed this, but how are those folders created?
In your project list, see here, I have projects and programs. There's this
Mhm.
little thing here. You can create subfolder,
Okay,
and I'll just leave it as new folder. So now down here, there's the new folder with nothing in it.
okay,
And you can even make a subfolder in the subfolder.
okay. All right, thank you. And then I just have
Yep.
one last question, and
Sure, of course.
again, you might have already gone over this, or you might later. If I need to close out a project, I'm no longer using it. When I click on those 3 buttons and I click close, is that the option I choose? Obviously, I mean, it says, what do you want to do with the survey sessions that are currently running? What does that mean? That they're, yeah,
If somebody has started the survey but hasn't finished it,
okay,
when you click on that, it will, the first option is stop and record what they've done so far, and that's it.
Okay.
So if you have 100 questions and they've answered 30, that's it. They get their 30. allow them to finish is you allow them to finish. So anybody who started it gets to finish, but nobody else can start it again.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Show you collaborate. We have a couple more minutes here. By default, this goes to people in Syracuse University. You know, it's not going to show me because I don't collaborate with myself. But you can see, and you click on the person's name. I don't want to do this just to make sure it doesn't, you know, and you can add selected, and then from that point, they would be listed here, and you can decide what kind of access they get, whether they can edit the survey or just view it, view the reports to it, activate it or close it, copy things, distribute it, send it out to people. This is good if indeed you are collaborating with other people, or if you're having problems with a survey, you can even give me access to it, and then I can go in and look and see. You know, sometimes I actually have to see what's going on in the survey to figure out what's going on. And you can do that. And then, of course, you can always you know, take the collaboration away once we get it figured out. Along the same lines with that, if you are working in some kind of you know, multi-person project, whether it's a grant project or you're in you know, an academic office or something where several people are working on it, I recommend that the principal investigator or the department manager, somebody who's in charge, actually creates the project and then gives access to whoever needs to have access to it. You know, if it's a 5-year grant project and you have some grad students working on it, grad students come and go. And if they create the project and they say, okay, I'm graduating, I'm out of here, it gets to be kind of tricky to have all of that survey and all of the data transferred to somebody else's account. Whereas if it's all under the PI's account, then you don't have to worry about it. Makes life a lot easier. Along the same lines, if you have your own projects and you're moving to another institution that has Qualtrics, as soon as you know where you're going, you want to get in touch with the IT people of where you're going, as well as Qualtrics, so that you can get your all your projects and your data transferred over easily. You know, if you have a lot of them, it's one thing. If you have one or two, you can always do you know, export the survey to a QSF and email it to yourself along with the data. But as I say, if you're moving and you want to take everything with you, as soon as you know where you're going, start working on that. Any questions? And in the workshop reminders, where I give you the link to get to all the class outlines. There's another thing, I think I call it checklist. It's all kinds of things that you need to think about if you're doing a Qualtrics project, but not necessarily specific to Qualtrics. Things like planning and testing and doing your IRB stuff. I highly recommend taking a look at that. So if there are no other questions.
I have a question. Can you
Sure.
send the link
Mhm.
again?
Sure. Let's see. There you go.
Thank you.
Yep. Anything else? Okay, then. Thank you, everyone. I will see you again next Thursday at 3:00. Have a good week, everybody. And of course, if you have any questions during the week, you know where to find me.
Thank
Say
you, Paul.
thank
This was
you.
great.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye.